Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Alex Bradley, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together today. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today, and then we'll talk about anything that you want to highlight that you're working on for today and or tomorrow, okay? And just full disclosure, you and I have worked together before, so we're friends. We actually met face-to-face the other day for the first time, which was crazy with all the stuff that we've done together. But I'm super excited to have you here, bud.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. I'm excited to be here.
I know for a fact that you're going to inspire and motivate some people to do things that they've been putting off. I promise you, with your life story, you're going to inspire and motivate some people today. And this is super exciting. So, all right, where were you born?
I was born in Manteca, California. That's not where I grew up, but it's not far from where I grew up. So I grew up in Oakley. Manteca is, honestly, I think it's near like Tracy, Stockton. It's Northern California.
Okay, so like the San Joaquin Valley area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't really grow up over there. I just know that I was born in a hospital in Manteca. I want to say my parents were probably living in Tracy at the time.
Okay.
And I think it's pretty close to there.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So where did you grow up?
Primarily in Brentwood / Oakley, California, which is just a little bit west of like Tracy and Manteca. We like to say we're from the East Bay area, but if you're talking to people in the Bay Area, they might make fun of you for that. But it's about an hour and a half east of San Francisco. A lot of people know like Walnut Creek, Concord, or even like Pittsburgh and Antioch. It's like right next to that. So
people are always trying to make fun of people for everything, right?
Of course. Right? So what
was your favorite thing about growing up there?
It was a small town-ish. I mean, compared to where we're at now in San Diego, I think there was like 30,000 people in Brentwood, which is like the bigger of the two cities. But my favorite thing was just, as a child, like I felt like I had so much freedom. I had a little flip phone in 4th grade that I would use to check in with my parents, and they would just let me like roam the neighborhood. I remember we would build dirt jumps like in the back of the neighborhood. There was a creek that actually ran through Oakley, California. And so all along the creek, we'd go in there, we'd go crawdad fishing every 3rd, 4th grade, just out roaming around, on my own, fishing for crawdads, building jumps, riding my bike, going, walking along the train tracks. Like I had so much freedom, and it was dangerous for a little kid to be doing a lot of those things, but it was a safe area, and my parents trusted me. And so I'd say that's my favorite thing for sure. It's just like the adventure that I was able to experience as a kid.
That's cool, man. So where do you go to high school?
I went to high school in Oakley. I went to Freedom High School. Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad, subject? Not really. I hated math. I'll tell you that. I like today I would say history. Like as an adult, I really like love and appreciate history. But I feel like in high school, like there was nothing in school that I was excited about really when it came to academics. So I played baseball in elementary school and middle school. And then when I got into high school, actually no, in middle school, I left playing baseball and got into skateboarding. And so that was my hobby as a teenager until I got a license, and then my hobby just became girls.
Right.
I grew up mostly in Oakley. My parents were separated. They separated when I was 1, I think. And so my dad was mostly in Oakley. My mom bounced around a lot, that area. And so I was 50-50. I'd spend a week at my mom's, then spend a week at my dad's. We went back and forth every Monday. But my dad was somehow able to convince the court that he was staying in one place and that I would go to school wherever he lived. And so all of my education and upbringing was primarily in like Brentwood and Oakley.
Gotcha. Okay. So what did your dad do for a living?
He's been retired since I was born. He was actually a
Wow.
Navy SEAL, and he got sick in the Gulf War, and he was in the Navy for 9 years. And I think just before I was born, he got out of the Navy because he was too sick.
Oh. So is he
Yeah.
okay today, or is
Yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be, dead a long time ago, but he keeps
yeah.
on pushing through. He's got his own health issues, but he's a stubborn guy and doesn't really let that hold him back. And he was entrepreneurial too, I should say. So he was retired, but he had a tile business that he ran for a while. He started a tow truck company when I was in high school. So he was always busy doing something, but he didn't have to work, and so he had the flexibility as well to drop me off at school, pick me up at school, coach my baseball teams and stuff like that. So he was on every field trip that I ever went to. He was very involved in my life, like as a kid in school and like extracurricular activities and stuff like that.
That's cool. It doesn't surprise me that he's stubborn. I mean, being a Navy SEAL, right? You got to have like stubbornness on steroids just to become one, let alone stay one, right?
Yeah, just to have the belief that you can even get through it for sure. It takes
Yeah.
a certain type of mindset.
So we actually interviewed a Navy SEAL a few weeks ago, and the guy was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. He literally graduates from college, goes into the Navy recruiter's office and says, I want the position in the Navy that has the highest attrition rate. And the guy goes, SEALs, by far, SEALs, right? He ends up in BUDS. And now, full circle, he's down here right now. We're taping on April 11th, 2024. He's down here right now. His 22-year-old son is in BUDS.
Wow, that's
Isn't that
awesome.
crazy? And he's down
Yeah.
here just as a support system in case he needs him. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah,
That's
it's incredible. Yeah, my dad, is very proud to be in the Navy, and I feel like a lot of my upbringing and the way he raised us was a lot of the foundation and like just his principles came from that experience that he had. But he always pushed me to go to college. He, got the GI Bill. He paid into that when he was in the Navy, and so my college was paid for. I actually
wow.
got an allowance from the GI Bill. I got paid to go to school while I
Wow.
was in school. They covered my tuition, and I was making like $1,000 a month by the time I graduated just from the GI Bill. So
And
he
they
like
paid for your education, so
and they paid for my
you didn't have a
tuition.
student loan after
I
and
didn't
all
have
that.
any student loans or anything like that.
So where did
And
you go to college?
I went to I started at San Diego Mesa College. I actually
Okay.
moved down from Oakley to San Diego to go to junior college. I was a very average like C student in high school, so I wasn't getting into San Diego State. But I went there for 3 years, got an AA there, and then transferred to San Diego State and finished there. Did 2 years there and graduated in 2017.
What made you come to San Diego?
I grew up just fantasizing about Southern California. I was from a small town with like not really much to do. It was just everything was far away. The beach was far, the city was far, and so I grew up and just like fantasizing about like the beaches, the weather, and everything like that. I'd never even been to San Diego, LA, anywhere in Southern California at all. I went to Disneyland when I was like one, so I don't remember that. But yeah, I just got the idea in my head like as a young kid that I was going to go to Southern California. One of my original dreams, actually, I grew up watching like all of those shows where they would rehab cars and make these cool muscle cars and stuff like that. I remember Chip Foose was like uh, my inspiration as a kid. I thought he was the coolest guy, and
Love that guy.
he had this show. I forget what it was called. Maybe it
Overhauling.
was Overhauling. Yeah.
Overhauling.
So they made the coolest cars, and they were based out of I think Orange, California. And
Mhm.
so I told myself I am going to open a shop. I'm going to do exactly what he does, and I'm going to go down to Southern California. So I always thought I'd end up like in Orange County,
Hmm.
or in that area. And then I think it was like sophomore year of high school, I started having to seriously like figure it out and pick a college that I was going to start, working towards.
Hmm.
And so I was just on Google after school one day, looking up all the colleges, and I came across like San Diego State University, and it just looked beautiful. It's like
Yeah.
Spanish style buildings and everything like that. And to be honest, at this time, I didn't even know where San Diego was. I just knew it was Southern California. I didn't know it
Right.
was like the, last city in California before you hit the border or anything like that. And so at that moment, I was like, all right, San Diego State, like that's it. And I spent the next 2 years just telling myself, like, that's what I'm going to do. That's where I'm going to go. And that was the whole reason. Southern California, beaches, weather. That school looks cool. That's where I want to go. I made the decision and kind of just, I guess, spoke it into existence.
That's cool. So my dad is a body man and has been a body man for 60 plus years. And he actually worked on one of the projects that Chip Foose worked on the
No way.
show. Yeah, guy
That's
bought it
awesome.
at an auction. So it was done for a guy. They steal them and all that kind of stuff, right? So it was done for a guy as a surprise. He got it. They family gave it to him, kind of thing, right? And he got into financial strains and ended up selling it at the Barrett Jackson auction in Orange County. This guy buys it. He's a tech millionaire. He's a young guy in his 20s. He's worth a bunch of money, right? And his staff is moving his cars around in his garage, and they backed it into it was a VW van. They backed it into a pole. And so it's got this dent in the back of it, right?
Oh no.
And the guy previous owner had driven it, so it had pockmarks and stuff on it. It wasn't perfect, right? And so this guy, this tech millionaire, starts dialing around, starts trying to find somebody to handle this thing because he's going to build a VW museum around this van. No joke. Okay. And so he ends up finding my dad through a bunch of phone calls that he made. People kept saying, Larry Litton's the guy, this is the guy, right? And so he calls my dad, and my dad let him send it down so he take a look at it, right? And so he sends it down and he takes a look at it, and they decide to work together on it. And yeah, he completely redid this Chip Foose project. So
That's awesome.
crazy. So that's our connection to overhauling, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I
So
realized sophomore year, I think it was like spring break. I had saved up and I bought like an old 1972 Mustang, Mustang Coupe. And my dad had a friend through his towing business that had a shop where that's all they did. They rebuilt and customized like these old muscle cars. And so I spent like 3 weeks on a spring break at their shop, taking the car apart, sandblasting and everything like that. And it was at that moment I realized this is not for me. This like, oh man, I hated every moment of that. I spent my whole spring break there. I'd ride my bike to this shop where they had my car at. I'd get there right when they opened at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be there all day till like 5 p.m. And it was so stressful. I remember taking all of the bolts out of every panel and every nick and cranny of this car and just thinking like, how am I ever going to know like where to put these things back? Like it just was not clicking for me. It was stressing me out.
this
And
is why we have people do internships.
yeah, it was the perfect internship because I realized this is not for me. And also, I remember on overhauling, geez, sorry.
Somebody wants to be in the interview. Who is that?
Yeah, that's Luna.
There's
And this is
Luna.
that's her spot.
Yeah,
So
Luna wants to be in
yeah,
the interview.
yeah.
It's
So
not right that we're having an interview without her.
yeah, no, you're welcome, Kat.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, and the other thing is I remember Chip was so good at drawing. He would sketch these cars out and they looked beautiful. And I can't draw like a stick figure to save my life. So I realized that was a dream, and I love the TV show, but
Yeah.
it just was not for me. But I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always like as a kid, like I wanted to not just rebuild cars, but I was like, I want my own shop. Like I am going to be the guy that, owns the building, the business and everything like that. And so I think that's something that's kind of interesting that I realized as an adult, like, wow, I've always kind of had that drive to just not want to be an employee anywhere. I lost that along the way a little bit, briefly in college and stuff like that, but it was always there.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Who was the most influential person to you growing up?
That's tough. Like as a young kid, like in elementary school, for sure would be my dad. Like we were really, really close. He was so involved. Like I said, he was a coach on all my baseball teams, and we spent a lot of time together. I
Mhm.
yeah, was obsessed with my dad like as a kid in elementary school. As I got older, we started butting heads in middle school. I started growing up and like having my own friends, and didn't want to spend as much time like just hanging out with him. And
Mhm.
um, also, I'm just as stubborn as him. Like I'm like a carbon copy of that guy, and so
Yeah.
we'd butt heads a lot. And actually, I ended up like it got bad like sophomore year in high school. I moved out of my dad's house and went full time living with my mom, and our relationship was really rocky for years. It wasn't until probably around the time I graduated college that we really started like rebuilding our relationship, and it's come a long way since then. But yeah, as a young kid, definitely my dad, and then after that, um, I'm not really sure to be honest. I like got really involved with just like my friend group,
Mhm.
and kind of created my own family there. And so I think we all influence each other.
Yeah. So you go to San Diego. So you get your AA in Mesa. What was your AA in?
It was just general business administration.
Okay. And then you go
Yeah.
to San Diego State. What'd you get your bachelor's in?
It was business administration, and then I did a minor in leadership,
Okay.
which was a new program that they had that I was, really interested in. That was probably my favorite part of San Diego State was the classes that I got to take in leadership.
So when you look back at Mesa, what was your favorite thing about it going to Mesa?
Mesa sucked, to be honest with you. It was
Okay.
just like, yeah, it was I mean, the school is great. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with the school if you compare it to other community colleges. It's probably one of the best
Mhm.
community colleges. But for me personally, I moved down to San Diego. I moved 500 miles away. I didn't know anybody here.
Yeah.
And another part of that story is I actually moved down with my now wife. We were boyfriend girlfriend at the time. We met senior year in high school.
Mhm.
um, we were 16 and fell in love, and she was going to go to San Francisco State when I met her, and I convinced her that no, 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 like I'm going to San Diego State, I'm going to San Diego, and you're coming with me.
Mhm.
And at this point I had no plan. I hadn't even applied, I don't think, for San Diego State yet. I didn't know that I wasn't going to get in. I probably could have guessed though, based on my grades. And um I one way or another I convinced her like let's go to San Diego, and she helped me figure out like, hey, we can go to this community college and then transfer to San Diego State. So she was a
Right.
big part of like helping to facilitate that. I was like the visionary, and she was very much like the implementer in that situation. And so just a big part of my story, I want to share this. We were 17. We signed a lease. We were dating for probably 6 months, 5 or 6 months.
Mhm.
We did a trip to San Diego over our spring break, senior year in high school.
Mhm.
We came down here, toured a bunch of places, signed a lease, and then a few months later in August, we moved in together. We were 17 years old. We'd been dating for 9 months. We moved, 8 hours away from our hometown,
Mhm.
and got an apartment together. So because of that, like we had a very different college experience than I think most people do. But my thing with community college, going back to your question, is I wasn't able to really connect with a lot of people there. There
Mhm.
wasn't a lot of like social life aspect of it. It felt just like college, or I'm sorry, it felt like high school. Or it felt like a job. Like I just was in a routine. I'd go to work. I had a part-time job at a restaurant. I'd go to school, I'd go home, and that was it. So like for the first few years in San Diego, I struggled to build a social life and a big friend group. We had a couple friends here and there from work and stuff like that, but we were really missing that. Also, I think as a new couple, um, we just did a lot of things ourselves.
Mhm.
And so we weren't putting ourselves out there enough to like meet new people because we had each other to lean on.
Yeah.
We weren't forced to get out there and meet new people. So I don't know, I felt kind of lonely at Mesa College. It was a great school. Teachers were good and everything like that. And they were rebuilding everything. There's beautiful, but it was just that social aspect that I didn't realize until I transferred to San Diego State, like how important that was until I finally started to get that. But that was a big piece of it from my
Yeah, and
experience.
community college, that's a great observation because community college is really transitory in nature, right? Because you're not there for that's not your end destination.
Mhm.
Oftentimes you're there to get to a point like you're doing to prepare to go to San Diego State. There are a lot of people that I've actually met and interviewed that did really well and they went to Mesa, right? They started out at Mesa, but they ended up going somewhere else, UCSD, whatever, right?
Yeah,
So so yeah, I get it. I went to Palomar College, and I took one course at Maricosta College. That's another story. But Palomar was not my destination. Palomar was where I was at the time, but I was doing that to then transfer to a 4-year school, which I ended up transferring to San Diego State. So it's
nice.
it's just community college is that way. But once you get to San Diego State, it's different, right? Because there is infrastructure there. There are social clubs there. There's all kinds of ways for you to connect with people, right?
Yeah, and that's was definitely my experience. So, like I said, I at this point was still very entrepreneurial minded. Like I knew that I wanted to finish college and eventually start my own business. Didn't necessarily know what that was, but I, you know, I knew that I didn't want to stay in a W-2 and do the corporate ladder type of thing. And I felt like I didn't really, I felt like I didn't fit in like at community college. There's a lot of people that are just, there and
Mhm.
a lot of people that go to community college, they go to community college because they graduate high school and they don't really have a plan. And so they
Yeah.
just kind of stick into an education routine to
Trying to
do
figure out what they're going to
something.
do.
Yeah. They almost treat us like a gap year. And
Yeah.
so I just didn't really feel like I related to anybody.
Yeah.
And then I went to San Diego State, immediately like joined several student organizations. I was in the student union. And the biggest impact on me by far was I joined Alpha Kappa Psi, which is a co-ed business fraternity.
Okay.
So Caitlin, my wife, and I, we both joined and became members of this community or of this fraternity. And that was life changing for me because I went from like no friends at all at Mesa College to pledging for this fraternity, and all of a sudden there's 150 people in this fraternity. There's 30 something people in our pledge class, and they all like seem to have the same mindset. Like they're about personal growth. Like that's a huge thing. We're all there because we're trying to get better and push ourselves and challenge ourselves. A
Good.
lot of them were entrepreneurial minded and stuff like that. So all of a sudden I'm like, wow, like I found my group of people that I didn't even think existed. And so that was absolutely life changing. And through that process, like pledging and trying to become a part of a fraternity, like you bond with people really, really quickly. And so it was an incredible experience going through that.
That's cool. So what was your favorite thing about San Diego State? Was it the Alpha Kappa?
Alpha Kappa Psi. Yeah, it was definitely pledging for the fraternity. A lot of people don't like pledging, but I really enjoyed it. It was fun, and you push yourself so hard. Like it was crazy the things that we would do in order to impress the members of this fraternity. We had to do a new presentation for them every single week, and we would be up until like 4 o'clock in the morning, like multiple days a week, trying to nail down these presentations and come up with these scripts and practice them and everything like that. And I actually had to get a job on campus. I was working at Chili's when I first went to San Diego State.
Mhm.
And then when I started the fraternity, I wasn't available for the schedule that Chili's wanted me to work. So I had to leave Chili's and I went and I got a job working at the Starbucks on campus.
Oh, okay.
And that was flexible. but the only like shifts that worked with my schedule was the opening shift. And so I would have to be at Starbucks at 5 a.m. And so there were like weeks where I would go to class, be in class till 2 o'clock or whatever, and then meet up with some of my pledge brothers and be working on a project until 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd go home and sleep for like 30 minutes, hop on the trolley back to school to open up Starbucks. I'd be there for a few hours. I'd finish my shift, and then I'd go to class, and then I would just start the whole day all over again. And so that sounds crazy, doesn't sound fun, but like I enjoy like that kind of, I don't know, pressure or just like challenge, I guess, of like, hey, we're all struggling through this together and it sucks, but like we're going through the suck together, and like it's fun to do that. So
That's your dad.
at least during that time in my life, like I don't know if I'd want to do that now, but as a 20-year-old, that was the life for me.
That's your dad in you.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously, that stubbornness, right? That embracing the suck, so to speak, right? That's your dad.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It
is. So
that's cool. So, all right. So you graduate from San Diego State with a bachelor's degree. Then where do you go?
Well, something happened while I was at San Diego State. It was actually at the very end of our pledging process, our first semester at San Diego State, we found out Caitlin was pregnant.
Okay.
And so that, obviously threw a wrench in our plans a little bit. And it was a challenge for me because, again,
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.